Hi, my name is Josh Rose, and I serve as the science librarian at St. Mary's College Library. I'm very pleased to join you virtually today in your Bio 1 lab. I wanted to use this opportunity both to briefly introduce myself, but also to share a little bit of information about the biology literature and how you can explore and access biology papers and research through SMC Library. So here's my contact information and schedule. You're welcome to email me at any time at jjr9@stmarys-ca.edu. I'm also available through regular library reference hours on Wednesday 5 to 7 p.m. and Thursday 12 to 3 p.m. and by appointment through Zoom. So why would you contact me? Some things I've assisted students with in the past include finding and accessing research articles and books on topics of interest, helping with researching and writing literature reviews, and helping you to cite your sources or use citation management software. I'll point out briefly there is a biology library research guide. And this has some of the key databases, book catalogs, links to biology journals, and resources for citing and writing, as well as listings of professional associations. Also linked from here is this presentation itself, and so you can go back and any of the resources that are presented in the slides, you can click on those and they'll take you to those resources. So that's me. Here's an outline of what I'll quickly cover about the scientific literature and accessing it through SMC Library. So what is the literature? What types of literature are out there? How do you find, access, and keep track of the biological literature? How can you explore the latest issues of journals through the library? And how are primary research papers organized and structured, and what are their different parts? And then finally, some resources and support for citing and writing. So the scientific literature is this body of scientific publications that contain first-hand reports of research, and it's often reviewed by experts. And this literature provides a cumulative permanent record of scientific research that can be consulted to learn about research in a field. And there are basically three types of scientific literature. The first type is primary, or sometimes called empirical or experimental research, and these take the form of articles and are original peer-reviewed publication of a scientist's new research and theories. The way I like to think about it is this is where the authors of a particular paper are reporting their own findings from an experiment they designed and conducted to answer a research question. So they gathered data and they're reporting their results for the first time to a scientific audience in a peer-reviewed journal. Peer-reviewed just means that before the research is published, it's been reviewed by other scientists or experts, the author's peers, and deemed worthy of publication. So a second type or category is called secondary or review articles. And this type of literature cites or builds on or discusses or generalizes primary studies. So a secondary or review article would summarize or build on or discuss primary sources on a particular topic. And even though the authors are not the same people that did the actual experiments, they're sharing information about that research in order to help people understand the latest in that topic or in that particular research area. And lastly, a third type is called tertiary sources. And these are another source that generalizes or analyzes primary and secondary sources, and kind of gives you a broad overview of a topic. So a good example is something that you're probably all familiar with, your textbook. This would summarize or build on the primary, secondary sources that you might find in the literature. And you can see this in particular textbook chapters. If you go to the reference section or the bibliography, they're often cited studies, primary and secondary research articles. So some other types of science information could be popular science press sources like Science Daily, which has the latest research news, and these will often talk about new studies that have been done and link to the primary studies. So they're not the primary studies themselves, but they'll link to those primary sources, or they'll be about those primary sources. And then also one of my favorites, Wikipedia. I use this a lot. It's great information for getting an overview and an understanding when I'm new to a topic. By convention in academic and scientific writing, it's generally not appropriate to cite Wikipedia, so you won't want to include this in research papers or lab reports, but by all means use Wikipedia along with other encyclopedias to help gain an understanding to a new topic or see what sources have been cited in particular Wikipedia articles. But really where you'll find these primary and secondary sources is in peer-reviewed journals. So here's an example of a big name journal called Nature. This describes itself as a weekly international journal publishing the finest peer-reviewed research in all fields of science and technology on the basis of its originality, importance, interdisciplinary interest, timeliness, accessibility, elegance, and surprising conclusions. So this is one of the journals that the library subscribes to through our collections that you have access to as a St. Mary's student. Here's another example, the Journal of Experimental Biology. And again, this is a description of what type of research you would find in that journal. So how do you actually get to those primary studies in those journals? The library subscribes to a number of databases that have access to those journals and can be used to look up particular topics and to find the primary and secondary research about those topics. So there's a listing of a few. All of these are linked from the library research guide for biology. It includes Web of Science, Science Direct, Google Scholar, Wiley Online Library, and a publisher called Annual Reviews. So as you're exploring these databases and you find particular articles that look interesting, you'll often see these download PDF buttons or check for full text buttons, and these are the links that you can use to get to the actual article. Sometimes, particularly if you're working off campus, you may be asked by the publisher to purchase an article for like $22 or something like that. So please don't do that. As a St. Mary's student, you have access to both our subscribed resources through our library, but you also have access to our interlibrary loan service. So if there's an article that you want access to that's not available in our subscribed resources, you can request it through interlibrary loan. We'll track it down for you and we'll send you an email when it's available to download. Usually it just takes a couple days. You can also email me if you're struggling with accessing a particular article. So once you have particular articles, it's often helpful to save them somewhere so you don't have to keep looking for them. Simple way to do this, create a folder on your desktop with the label of the type of research, and you can rename the files of those PDFs to a common convention is the first author's last name followed by the year of publication, and then that's a common format. There's also tools for keeping track of research. So one of those tools is called Mendeley. All the librarians are familiar and trained with these resources, so we're always happy to help you get started with using tools like Mendeley to keep track of your sources. So here's an example of a topic you might be researching, a phenomenon called cytoplasmic streaming. You might just simply put those terms into these databases, and then the results that come back will be research articles, primary or secondary sources about that phenomenon. A trick is if you put multiple words in quotes that you want to search together, anything that comes back in the search results will have those terms somewhere in the text. So if I want to research cytoplasmic streaming as a full concept, I can put quotes around those terms, and then the results that come back will be about that topic. So that's searching the databases. Another way to explore the literature is just to browse new issues of journals. And an easy way to do that is to use a resource called Browsing that the library subscribes to that you have access to. And this is a nice way to keep track of cool journals you want to follow. And as new research in those journals is published, you'll see alerts pop up on either the web browser or it's an app on your phone that you can download. And you'll be able to track those as new research is published and kind of explore what journals are in your particular discipline that you want to keep track of. So how are those primary research studies structured? I will note for myself, it's often difficult for me to understand primary research. It takes me a long time to read it. There's a lot of technical language, and I may not even understand the whole thing. That's okay. Being able to pick apart the different parts of a research article can really be helpful. You can also use those secondary sources, those review articles, to get a broader overview of what a primary study is about, or even your textbook. Parts of those research articles that'll include a descriptive title, so this is to save the reader time and quickly describe what exactly this study is about. An abstract describes more about that study, so if you see from the title and the abstract, you can decide whether or not you want to continue reading or explore more with this source. The introduction, this will have kind of a literature review in itself. So this will describe the overall question or hypothesis the authors came up with, and it provides context by explaining how that research question was derived and how it connects to previous research. There will often be a methods section, so this describes the experimental approach that the authors took, and then they'll report their results. And so here you might see a lot of tables or figures describing their results. And then the discussion section or conclusion interprets those results and discusses the implications of the findings that they came up with. And it may also suggest questions for future research. And finally, there will be a references section. So this is where you can see all of the sources that have been cited throughout the text will be listed at the end, and this is how you can look those up in some of those library databases or Google Scholar. So that's a brief overview of literature in the biological sciences. I hope it's helpful. I did also want to mention there are a number of citing and writing resources linked from the Biology Research Guide, so these writing handbooks for the biological sciences, as well as the Center for Writing Across the Curriculum, QUAC, has support and resources for biology as well. And with that, here's my own references. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to working with you in this course and throughout your major at St. Mary's. Thanks.